Braytech learner number 1 is one of 2 corn snakes that we got from Silent Hill Reptiles in 2020, and he is the shyer of the 2 that we got from Silent Hill Reptiles this year. He is just learning to target out of his enclosure. He did a great job, and this is the furthest so far that he has targeted out of his enclosure. He has pretty confident behavior up until this point, and so then I move the target slightly to prompt him for more movement. He struck at it, and so then I just rested on one of those holes in the basket and wait for him to interact with the target without striking at it. And once he does that, then I deliver the reinforcement. He just needs to learn that the operant behavior that he needs to perform in order to get reinforced is to interact with the target in some way other than striking at it. He needs to touch it, and then he needs to look elsewhere for the reinforcement. I left the target there while he was eating to start to try to get him to understand that the food doesn't come out of the target, but comes from away from the target after he's touched it. Now, this is Nyssa. She's 1.5 years old. She's a 2019 corn snake we got from Silent Hill Reptiles. And she saw me getting ready, and she is just on top of things. Literally, she was already on her perch and at the enclosure opening, ready to come out. And look at this confident behavior she gives me here. And if you saw her training sessions, even just a few weeks ago, she wasn't coming all the way out of her enclosure. She wasn't shifting with this level of confidence. Nyssa's doing very, very well. While we're waiting for Nyssa to finish eating, I just want to show you an example of something that's repurposed for a humid hide. So this is just a baby wipes container that I've taken the top off of because it already has a hole in the top. And then I just put the damp sphagnum moss inside and close the lid. And I didn't have to create my own hole or do anything else. It's already designed to hold moisture. And it's super easy to repurpose these wipe containers for humid hides. The hole's already made for you. They're already intended to hold moisture. And Nyssa is in hers quite a lot. This is Roberta Lincoln, who you've seen before. She is a 1.5-year-old corn snake, and I have sped this footage up 2 times just because she was really taking her time coming out. She started out in her hide, and she must have been tightly coiled in her hide, and then she was in no hurry to come out. Although her training's very fluid, she doesn't hesitate. She keeps progressing forward throughout the session. She just wasn't moving quickly, and so for everyone's benefit, I sped up the footage just a little bit until she got her head at least over the enclosure threshold, and now we're at normal speed so that you can see how she's shifting out of her enclosure. And remember that this is a cooperative care behavior and that the animal is going to experience better welfare if they can learn to cooperate in their own care. And doing things like voluntarily exiting their enclosure are much better for the animal than being forcibly removed from the enclosure, and vice versa. So in just a little bit, you'll see her voluntarily shift back into her habitat. She has no problem coming over the perch. We've had a little bit of an issue with her getting frustrated near the end and striking at the target, and so I tried to intervene here before that happened, and it went really well. This is my Smooth Collie Luna. She's 6 years old. She was following me around while I was training the snakes, so I gave her an opportunity to do an exercise, which she absolutely loves to do. Now we're back with Roberta Lincoln, who is going to shift back into her habitat. So she's finished eating, she's on her station, and I'm asking her now to turn around and shift back into her enclosure. She started out really well. She actually moved fairly quickly. This footage is not sped up. She's still just in a 10-gallon, and so I have to plan ahead of time how I'm going to get her whole body back in because I don't have a really far distance to be able to move the target within the enclosure. I decide to take her as far as I can to the other end of the enclosure and then move the target down so that she has to come down towards the floor. And I know with this particular snake that when she does take the reinforcement, she strikes pretty hard and she wraps and coils pretty intensely, and her whole body usually follows to her to wherever she ends up with that food item. And so that behavior in itself got her all the way back into her enclosure. This is Gary 7. This is Roberta Lincoln's clutch mate. He's a little bit more shy than she is. However, he did great tonight. This is not sped up. And he was waiting and ready to come out and do the training session. And he had really, really fluent behavior as he started to exit his enclosure. Now, he has never exited his enclosure 100% during a target training session, but he's going further and further every time. And here you can see as soon as he figures out he can rest his weight on the perch, that he becomes more confident. I move the target to the other side of the perch because I really need him to coil slightly around it to get more of his body out of his enclosure. Snakes are long, and so to get them to station completely on something, you usually need to get them to coil their body or wrap it around something. But I didn't want to push him too far and have him strike at the target or get frustrated or frightened, and so I chose what I thought was a good time to reinforce. Here's Luna. She was again following me around, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to do something. So touches the target, gets a treat, and then we move on to see if Gary 7's finished eating, which he is. And I'm asking him to shift back into his habitat, which he has no problem doing. And again, I'm lowering the target towards the floor just to get most of his body into his enclosure without me having to go hands-on and help him at all. The more that you can allow the animals to voluntarily do, and the more behaviors you can allow them to have choice and control over, the better welfare that they will have. I just want to remind everyone again, for safety reasons, that for very small snakes, corn snakes, king snakes, tiny baby snakes of any species, please use a secure sliding top. And I always put a secondary metal mesh on top of the screen that comes with the terrarium, because I feel like the screen is flimsy, and this helps if anything jumps on it like a cat or we accidentally forget and set something on it. Now, this is Tuvok, who is a 1.5 years old and was recently moved to a 3 foot by 18 inch tall by 18 inch wide enclosure. And I just put his whole 10-gallon terrarium inside of this enclosure, and I just left the lid off, and that way he is free to habituate to the larger environment in his own time. I had no idea where he was, and so I am just systematically placing the target in different spots where I have found him before to see if I can get him to come out of hiding and show me where he's at, which he does. There he is. He was in his old 10-gallon. I'm not exactly sure where he was in there, but here he emerges, and he does a great job shifting out of that space and into the larger space. And I have found him all over this space, and so I honestly just had no clue where he was when I started, and I just was, again, systematically showing him the target, or allowing him the opportunity to see the target no matter where he might have been. He was produced by Port City Pet. He has been fed on this rock before, which is why I chose to lie the target on the rock and leave it there for him to come to and interact with before delivering his reinforcement. I don't know why it took him so long tonight to take his reinforcement. He seemed more interested in the target ball than the food, but no problem. He did really, really well. This is Candy Corn. She's an adult corn snake. She has never seen this target before. She's done some puzzle feeding and some problem-solving exercises and maze exercises before, but I wanted to show everyone what it looked like to pair the target with a reinforcer for the very first session. So she's never seen this target before, and I am just going to pair it directly with food the first time. Very simple. She takes the food. She wasn't afraid of the target. End of session. I want to remind everybody of the benefits of cooperative care behaviors, and here's a list of examples. I also want to remind everybody to keep in mind the snake's body language. Make sure that they're staying comfortable or just stretched slightly outside of their comfort zone, and that they are not getting scared or fearful and moving into that red zone. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you can contact us through our website.